is to say, who has won? Well, Tahrir Square, more than a year after the fall of the Mubarak regime, continues its now familiar display of protest, stoked up by the newly assumed military rule. For years, people across the Arab world have looked to Egypt, the strongest and most populous Arab country, for leadership. Now the world sees Egypt in political limbo, or perhaps even worse. Our diplomatic editor, Mark Urban, has recently returned from Egypt. Mark, where are these presidential results that we were supposed to have had?
Well, there was initially talk of having them yesterday, then today. Now it's been postponed. There's some rumours in Cairo tonight it might come out at the weekend. Meanwhile, Ahmed Shafiq, one of the candidates, the one who I think most people think has lost, tonight declared he was the winner, despite the fact that all the accounts that people have access to suggest he isn't the winner, and that the other candidate, Mohamed Morsi, who is the man who's been backed by the Muslim Brotherhood's political movement, the Freedom and Justice Party. Most people think he's got just under 2% more votes and that he should be the winner. But as it stands, we still don't have a winner.
So how is the public, which of course brought about this attempt at democracy, how have they been responding to all this?
Well, the public response has been very curious in a way. A week ago, this extraordinary judgment came out of the Supreme Court dissolving the Parliament. Now, this had been elected with a very large preponderance of Islamist members from the Muslim Brotherhood and even more strict adherents, Salafists. And they basically said, right, the whole lot of them can go due to a technicality in the electoral law. Most of us in Egypt at the time expected huge demonstrations to protest this. Virtually nothing happened. Now, the question now, I think, is that each move that the military council, the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces, or SCAF, makes seems to be calibrated by the reaction that it causes or doesn't cause. It seems that the absence of reaction to the dissolution of Parliament led them to take this staggering step, if you like, on Sunday night, pretty much reversing all of the gains of the revolution apart from the ouster of Hosni Mubarak, and to take this step, giving themselves these extraordinary powers. If Dr. Morsi is indeed confirmed as the President of Egypt, he won't be able to declare war, scrutinise the military budget, sign off the whole budget as a whole. He won't even be able to dissolve the Parliament when and if it gets reconvened and re-elected. So he's really in a very, very tight spot.
And what are the options then for the Muslim Brotherhood on the brink, perhaps, of power, but not much power?
Well, most people think there's going to be a very difficult period of prolonged crisis now, but effectively of negotiation between the two sides in this. The military, I think, at some level accept they can't hold all the power. Indeed, some people suggest, I've heard senior officers suggest, that they actually want Dr. Morsi to take all the responsibility politically for all the bad things that will happen in Egypt politically over the next year or two, particularly on the economic front. So the Brotherhood is calling for more mass protests tomorrow, Friday, of course. They're calling for a huge protest. They're also talking about occupying the square, Tahrir Square, continuously now. Until their grievances are met, Parliament is reinstated and the country is put back on a proper constitutional basis.
Mark, thanks very much. Well, let's speak now to two distinguished Egyptian writers, Ada Swef, who was among the crowds in Tahrir Square during the last year's uprising, and Professor Tariq Ramadan, author of The Arab Awakening, whose grandfather was one of the founders of the Muslim Brotherhood. Ada, how worried are you about your country?
Well, I'm very worried at the moment, of course, but I'm worried in the short term. I think that in the longer term, there's no rolling back what has happened, because people went out because the country was on its knees, because it was being run against the interests of the people, and they had had enough. And people demand a decent life, and they demand freedom, human rights, and so on. And they're not going to go back on these demands.
And could the people live with either person as president?
No.
No? No. In what way?
General Shafiq is a return to the old regime. General Shafiq represents the old regime coming back, consolidated with the military and resuming power. The Muslim Brotherhood are They're not what the revolution was about. They're not what the revolution really wanted.
And not why you took to the streets.
No,
Right.
but they are still a strand within the revolution, and they're still demanding change.
Terry, how concerned are you that actually what we are seeing is this kind of very slow, effectively a military coup? It's the military coming back into power one way or another.
Yes, I think that this is the case. But you know, it's not only something that we can see now. From the very beginning, when I was writing the book, I straight away said, behind the scene is not as simple as that. That the military and from within, we have tendencies within the military struggling, and some were supporting Mubarak and others were against. So I think that this is the taking over from behind the scene, and there was no real, you know, I never used the concept of revolution, and I was not talking about Arab Spring. I need that in the region we have something which is a chess game, much more than a domino effect. Yes, the people were, and I think that this is very important, that the only real revolution that we have in the Arab world now is an intellectual revolution, saying we can make it, and with non-violent demonstration we can act against the government. But now what is happening is really with the institution is to get someone in power who will have power without authority. It could be Morsi or Shafiq for the time being. What they are telling us, and they said this 2 days ago, is that in the coming, we are going to get a president for 6 months, and then we'll start again the whole process. What does it mean? It means that nothing is changing. And one thing that I want to say is that there are internal struggles. We also have to look at the region and say, who is also supporting what is happening? Because I don't think that we get it right if we think that the transparency and the democratic process is supported, for example, by the American administration today. I don't think so.
Right. Okay, so there's a question of outsiders. But I mean, you seem to be fundamentally optimistic, given the fact that, as we said earlier, there is no government, there is no parliament, there's no constitution. It's not clear who's in charge.
I think that what's happening is that the military are really actually trying to tighten their grip. That it almost for them doesn't matter which candidate, you know, gets the presidency. What they're doing, they're now they're threatening the committee that is set up to write the constitution, and they're talking about disbanding it and creating their own committee that will write the constitution that they want. They have got a law in place that allows them to arrest people, to detain civilians off the street, and they've now written in an immunity for the military if they do that. I think that these are the things, the underpinnings of the power that they are now trying to establish on the street, whichever candidate comes in.
Are you surprised how calmly, so far, most Egyptians have taken this? I mean, it obviously must be a really trying time. There's economic problems, as we heard from Mark a moment ago, and yet there's not, I mean, there are some demonstrations, everything seems to be relatively peaceful.
Yes, and I think that, you know, why we don't have the result today, I think it's because tomorrow is Friday, and if, for example, they were to announce that Shafiq is winning, something could happen. And you know, I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm not really optimistic, cautiously optimistic, hoping that what is going to happen in the near future is the people should not stop demonstrating, but the point is to avoid anything which has to do with violence. So it has to be non-violent, resisting process coming from the people if we want to keep the spirit, because at the end of the day what is happening now, we are too much looking at the political factors and forgetting the economic dimension of the whole process. Egypt is not Tunisia. Egypt is central to anything which is happening in the region. And when we speak about the army, we don't speak only about military force. We speak about economic power in the region. And I think that we
plugged into that.
Exactly. And I think that this is where we need the people and the Egyptians. And this is why it's good. What we have seen over the last weeks is people now committed to resist, but at the same time understanding that they should avoid violence. But the army can push the people to go towards violence because it can help them.
Exactly,
just briefly.
Exactly. I mean, I think really when you say that the country is surprisingly calm, I hope it remains calm to an extent, because my sense, our sense, is very much that people are being prodded towards violence. We get a lot of news about arms caches that are being found here, there and everywhere. The rumor mill is really working to scare people and panic them. And, you know, the army has played this divisive role for a long time now.
Thank you. Thank you both very much. Now, in the past hour, the credit ratings agency Moody's has downgraded its assessment